Good. Got it. Yeah, so I know we're all supposed to be embracing failure here. Unfortunately for me, it extended into the weekend when both my kids discovered my FailCon slides and spent the entire weekend asking me, why do you fail? I thought you were successful. Are you going to be the biggest fail at this conference? And if you were the biggest fail, would you be the winner of the conference? And it was good thorough objection handling, first of all, because when you look at the stuff, it sort of seems so obvious in retrospect, even to a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, that it kind of makes you really ask, well, first of all, this stuff is always hard, and we've talked about why it's hard here all day, but you would think that it would be a lot easier if you have some previous successes behind you, you can get social proof, you've kind of done it before. And really the moral today is that it's always hard. And a lot of the companies you think are doing well are actually probably not doing so well. There's a lot of companies doing great you may have never heard of. So my son, he came to New York with us, so he still remembers this. So we didn't win the show, but we made the finals. This was about a year ago. So you guys probably all read TechCrunch, you probably all follow the press. So imagine you heard about a company, you went to TechCrunch Disrupt, made the finals. You might not know much about them, but you're kind of reading about them. They talk about their team, a bunch of really experienced folks. Mike has either started or been an executive at 3 companies in a row. They either went public or had big exits. Benchmark funded 3 of the companies. He's been an entrepreneur in residence there twice. Benchmark invested. Mike Maples, Ron Conway. So kind of, good start. Like most companies would love to have some of this. So you'd probably say, okay, team, seem to have good people behind them. Don't know what they're doing yet, but they seem to be kind of set up. Then they start to talk about the problem they're solving, and it's the email problem. It's email overload. It is the fact that email sort of seems to be at this breaking point. Every year someone writes an article like this that says, the madness can't go on, we have to fix email. And in particular, we wanted to focus on email in the workplace. We wanted to ask, you have the social web, you have mobile, you have cloud, you have all these great tools out there. Is this still kind of your typical day? Especially in a big company, but this is also true in a lot of startups that are supposedly more innovative, where you kind of work out of your inbox. So we came to pitch what we thought was a solution that would get some market share kind of against this problem. So now at this point, you might not know, maybe you're skeptical of can they really do it, but you can sort of validate, compelling team working against a big problem. So then the company makes the finals, they get some press, a bunch of really positive product reviews come out. People review the product and say this makes a ton of sense. They win some awards, they get some analyst coverage. They get this one firm that says this is a sure thing, like this is an obvious problem, makes a ton of sense, this thing's gonna happen. So you sort of think, if you were a judge at TechCrunch, you'd probably say, actually they didn't say this, but you might say, great team, working against a big problem, seem to have some good people, some good evidence this thing is working. No guaranteed success, but you probably think these guys have a shot, right? You're probably also thinking, God, if I could just raise money, if I could just get this kind of press coverage, I'd have a shot. Like that's all, kind of what you need. Guess what happens? Let me give you a hint, it's called FailCon for a reason. So this was not like we spent years and years trying to make this thing work. I mean, this was 4 months after the show. This article came out later, but we made the decision to pivot in about September that year, and we launched in May. And we didn't even really roll the beta out until sort of June, July. So what went wrong? So I think that it's fun to speak at conferences when you can talk about success. And it's also fun to speak at a conference when you can talk about a couple failures you had, but then the punchline is, then we succeeded. I think it's hard to talk about having a track record of success, then you have a failure. Partially because maybe it invalidates some of the previous successes. Maybe you can ask maybe those weren't legit. You can't use not raising money as an excuse. You can't use not having gotten the press or not having the experience or gee, I've done this before. It's sort of just pure failure. And the reason I want to tell the story though is that I meet with young entrepreneurs starting companies all the time. The list of failures is so consistent between what we did and what a lot of them are doing. And somehow reading the books and sort of, it doesn't quite sink in, but if you hear somebody who supposedly knows what they're doing actually walk through the exact same failures, somehow it sort of sticks. So this is kind of my way, hopefully giving something back. So we'll see if it works. So I think that One thing I believe really strongly is most startups have failed before they even started. Meaning the seeds of that failure were part of what the company set out to do and who the people were. And they either can't pivot their way out of them, or by the time they would decide to make that pivot, they're so far down the road they don't have another chance. So I want to talk about the origin story. So I was an entrepreneur in residence at Benchmark. They had funded 3 of my companies, have been the EIR there twice, good track record with those guys. Wanted to do a B2B SaaS company. Joseph was the CEO and the co-founder of my last company. He's now a general partner at Greylock. And at the time, Joseph had just started a photo sharing company. So he and I were brainstorming. I wanted to start a company. He wanted to invest or be on the board. We were looking at ideas. So he started to put his company together, and they immediately said, how are we going to handle the internal collaboration problem? You got like 5 employees, you got emails, you got documents, you got projects. How do you manage all that? So they kind of looked at the usual suspects. So Basecamp from 37 Signals, great product. Raise your hand if you've ever used this product. Raise your hand if you used it last week. So Yammer, great product, I love it. How many of you have ever used Yammer, have ever tried it? How many of you used it last week? So there's nothing wrong with these products. I mean, they're brilliant products. I'd love to have the ability to create a product that good. But this whole market has been really tough. There haven't been a lot of collaborations, successes in the collaboration market. And in a lot of cases, it's because these things are all competing against email. They're trying to displace email. They're trying to move your work out of your inbox. So Joseph came up with this really clever internal solution at their company where they managed everything out of their inboxes just because they figured they were going to end up there anyway. But they created this internal kind of homegrown system where they CC'd all their discussions to these mailboxes, which then posted the content onto the wiki, made it searchable. So he kind of showed me what they did, and we said, you know what? If you could really build a kind of an enterprise 2.0 product, which is kind of what was in vogue at the time, what if you create a product people actually used? They used ongoing basis, so it wasn't a one-time thing. They didn't have to use their inbox to use it. They could get started, 0 friction, no accounts, no sign up, no downloads. What if you made it like you took all the best features from Tumblr and the social web and made it a great mobile app and kind of made it kind of like imagine if you built Google Groups today, but you designed it for business and you kind of designed it exactly the way you would do if you were starting from scratch. That's kind of what we were doing. And then you can make it viral because the whole, with mailing lists and collaboration, one user can invite 100 other users. If those users don't have to create an account or do anything to get started, they're users, and hopefully they discover it so you can get viral. And then there's a premium business model there. So we said, okay, this is worth a shot. Now this is not a story of a company that raised $10 million and hired 50 people. All of our companies, we've done some version of kind of a lean playbook. It's always been small team, get a lot of customer validation, get a product out early, pivot, iterate, get the product market fit, don't expand or build your distribution team until you've, so this was the playbook. This has always been the playbook. But we hit failure kind of all along, a couple kind of milestone-based failures, a couple that sort of overrode the entire endeavor, which I think are the most interesting ones. So I want to cover these in turn, then I'll leave 10 minutes for Q&A. So the first thing is, we built a great team, great engineering team. Guys who've all worked together before, wanted to do another startup. I decided, I've been a general manager, I've been a product manager, I've been a business unit manager, I've been an entrepreneur. I'll take on, CEO, I'll do the customer validation, I'll run the engineering team, I'll do sales, I'll do marketing, I'll do finance, I'll do IT, I'll do. So, I'll do business, these guys do the problems. So do you see a problem with this?
You're doing too much.
Yeah, so at the last company, and I think almost every success story you can think of, you had some version of this model here. I don't know if you guys watch the show, but you got the best meth cook in the world on the right. Then you got the guy on the left who will blow your head off, and he knows all the street dealers, and he's the hustler. Especially season 1, when he was like totally doing distribution. Like that was my favorite. Now, every company I've ever been a part of, I was either co-founded with a hustler, a really good business co-founder, or we had a first employee or an executive or somebody who really played that role. And what ended up happening is that, I was doing customer validation like 1 day a week, sales 1 day a week, and not doing it as well as somebody who's a true hacker or true hustler who can just do this stuff. And, we've learned a bunch already about, getting to product market fit, doing validation, building pipeline, growth hacking. everybody sort of thinks they're doing that stuff. You know, I went and talked to a customer last week and he liked what we're doing. Who's ever said that? Never said that. But if it's important, do you have somebody doing it all day? And somebody who's good at it? And somebody who's not touching code? Somebody who's not even working on the product? Unless maybe it's product management and they're bringing requirements back and helping shape the product. Because, you know, in my, things just don't get done unless there's somebody good at them who does them all day. And what I realized later on is we had made a mistake I think a lot of startups make, maybe most startups make, which is we built an engineering team. And an engineering team is not a company. And if you have an engineering team that has some folks who rated this and managed to get it done, it can work. But generally, you know, to do, especially if it's a B2B company, you need somebody to do that. So then we said, you know, good entrepreneurs validate. Now, bad entrepreneurs validate the solution. All they do is want to get their product out there. What does Dave McClure always say? You know, pitch the problem, not the solution. We said, okay, let's focus on the problem. Let's really go validate this email thing as a problem. People really aren't happy with these other tools. So I would have a lot of these kind of conversations. Do you get too much email? What email client do you use? Are you happy with it? Have you ever tried any of these web-based collaboration tools? Are you happy with them? Would you try this? Do you think your team would try it? So, and I probably had, you know, 50 of those conversations. It's not like I didn't do this stuff. So, would you say yes to most of these questions? Do you think most people would say yes to most of these questions? Do you think you learn anything by getting a bunch of people who said yes to all these questions?
No.
No. So I think that we got so focused on validating the problem, we didn't get the solution in front of people. We knew we needed to get an MVP out early, but because of what we were doing and we were kind of competing with Google Groups and some other products, we thought that an MVP, it didn't really tell the story. It didn't have a bunch of extra functionality those products didn't have or didn't have a better UI. Kind of wouldn't, we kind of fell with that usual rationalization of, you know what, we're sort of, let's just get the product out. Like, let's just get it in people's hands, get it into beta, then the learning will happen. We're kind of at the limit of what we can do with customer interviews. So the next thing we did was, or just a point on this one, I think everybody thinks they're doing a good job of this, and everyone's read the book, everyone's listened to Eric, everyone's read the customer development stuff. You probably think you're doing this, and it's the, I talked to a customer last week, it's the, I gave a demo to my friend, I did a usability test and somebody found the button I was hoping they would find. That's not customer validation. And if you really go through what these things say, there's a methodology to it, it's very rigorous. You're not selling customers, you're not telling them how great your idea is. You want them to sell you on why they really want you to build it. So if you're selling at this stage, you're probably in trouble. So then, let's talk about value proposition. So what's the Enterprise 2.0 value proposition? What's the collaboration and kind of project management value proposition? It's things like be more productive, waste less time, get more done. With Enterprise 2.0, it was sort of discover expertise in the workplace, build a reputation by helping your coworkers. It's very much kind of a rainbow and unicorns thing. It's very much of a soft value proposition. It is sort of stuff you're supposed to care about, stuff everybody says that they want to do. But especially, and again, I'm talking, this is more of a B2B model here, although I think it does apply to sort of B2C analogies. You know, who's going to get fired if people, you know, get too much email? Or who's got a budget, a big dollar sign next to kind of one of these initiatives? You know, probably nobody in the enterprise. And I put this together, I'm kind of testing this right now. If you think about things that companies care about more revenue, they care about things they have to do, compliance, security, kind of cost savings projects. They care a little bit about the stuff on the bottom, but it's got the soft value proposition. Then you, on the technology spectrum, you kind of have established technologies like email and the web. Then on the right, you have social cloud, mobile, big data, things that are really new and companies are really just trying to figure out. If you think about where most of the success in the markets come from, it's Google and Facebook, which is all about helping businesses bring in new customers. It's Salesforce, which is helping you close more deals. It's things like my last company, which was more about compliance and security, which is not as high on the list, but people still need to do it. It is support, it is the things on the bottom, you know, there still have been some success stories with the collaboration market, but they're generally, you know, companies well-funded, great management team, and they're riding some really big wave. In this case, it was social. So this was us. So not only were we not solving a problem that people were, you know, had budget cared about, we were over here in old technology. People already had it. They'd already got it from Microsoft or Google or somebody. Maybe didn't quite believe that email was sort of the breakthrough they were looking for. And we just kind of ended up kind of in the wrong side of this matrix. So then we built a pretty good product. It had a bunch of interesting features around easy to create mailing lists, easy to discover them, subscribe, unsubscribe, document versioning, search, just all these kind of whizzy features that sort of made it way better than a Microsoft Exchange mailing list. It made it easy to jump in and out of projects. It made it really easy to onboard new employees who could get the entire history of everything that happened before. Unlocking a lot of data that would have been stuck in your Exchange server or in somebody's mailbox. So the product was great, and we did get a few thousand users, and they liked it a lot. They talked about it. They rated it. It actually went viral. I mean, it grew on its own even after we pivoted. It just kept not viral like linear, but it just kept growing on its own. But we discovered later that the best products out there aren't products people like. It's products that a few people really, really love. And then maybe even other people hate them. But they tend to be polarizing. They tend to be things that the people who love them will bring, they'll pay for them, they'll bring along other, you have something to start with there. We kind of had this stuff in the middle where it's kind of useful, people kind of liked it, they certainly liked it better than what they had. But if you don't have that thing that really has a strong point of view, or it's a little bit controversial, or it's kind of a little bit new and different, then you're not going to get, you're not going to have people pay for it. It's not going to go viral because they're not going to rave about it to their friends and say they have to have it. And the other thing we discovered was, Google is not that much. If you talk about enterprise email, they're still not, Microsoft, Exchange, and even Lotus Notes are still the dominant players there. But if you get to the early adopters, which is more cloud-based, innovative companies who would try something like us, then Google is a much bigger factor. And they're getting Google for free in some cases, so they already paid for it at least. They might be using Google Groups. And then that insult to injury, right when we were starting to launch, Google not only launched Google+, they announced they were going to add all these kind of whizzy social Google Plus features to Google Apps for Business, which I think blew away like an entire chapter of the Google App Store, because the whole App Store is full of these kind of social and collaborative projects. So this was sort of like the final nail in the coffin. Now along the way, you've probably all hit some version of this, which is, you're validating an idea. The person you're talking to, they might be a friend. They might be somebody who knows you have smart people at the company. They might know your investors. They may have seen the press. So they don't really know if what you're doing makes sense. But they kind of say, well, you're a smart person. You must like this for a reason. So you get positive feedback. You kind of keep going, and you keep getting more and more positive feedback, which makes you more and more positive on what you're doing, which then moves you from validation mode to selling mode. Then people get more and more positive. Well, Micro's doing. Like, he seems to think this thing is great. He's got all these great investors. And next thing you know, you have this positive feedback loop where everyone you talk to loves it, but they're saying they love it because either they're a friend of yours, or they see who invested in you, or they figure it might work, or they don't really know. And it's really hard to find somebody who either doesn't know you, will give you an honest opinion. This is part of why getting an MVP out early is so important, because with an MVP, you can actually see what people do, not just hear what they say, where they're telling you it looks interesting, but they don't really, they don't really know. Now, we did a few things well, just to kind of rescue my reputation a little bit here. First of all, we pivoted, but once we decided to pivot, we did it. We didn't spend days and days debating it and agonizing over it and test. We just said, you know what, we just, like, gut reaction, it's not going to work. And we made that decision in just a couple days. The investors and the board were great. I mean, in fact, they kind of acted like they wanted us to pivot. Mike Maples told me, he has a video on pivots. It's on TechCrunch somewhere if you want to watch it. He's like the pivot master. Every single one of his companies was a big pivot. He's like, I knew this was going to happen. This always happens. It's not a start if you don't pivot. Like, he's got zero issue with like what about our investment and what about your original plan, which is part of why you want to get investors who are experienced in the first place. The team was great, because this is the team that signed up to work together. They didn't sign up to work on that one problem. They signed up to do something cool, and if we pivoted, then as long as we got to work together, it would be great. And then we started on a new project, which had a much lower degree of difficulty. We added some members to the team, going a lot deeper on customer validation. Now we're not through the customer validation phase yet, but we're also not making a bunch of the same mistakes that we made before. So just in summary, you guys have probably seen, there's a lot of companies out there that have the TechCrunch coverage, they have the logos, they have the investors. Some of them are not doing anything. Some of them are going out of business. Some of them went out of business and just never took their website down. There's other companies, like my last company, for example, where you probably never heard of us, but we were generating tons of revenue. Like, we were just doing the boring stuff that Eric was talking about earlier, just making the product better, just closing deals. So I think it's easy to get distracted, not only feeling bad you don't have the press, but also feeling like if only you did, everything would get easy, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't get easy. Customers don't care who you are, how much money you've raised, how cool your website is. They only care if you're solving a problem they care about. And I also realized in retrospect, every step along the way, I always kind of knew the answers, but all this other stuff, all the social proof, the investors, they just kind of distracted me from just saying, you know what, this doesn't feel like it's going to work, and usually at some point you kind of know. And with your thing, whatever you're working on now, you probably already know kind of the big issue with it. My recommendation is to kind of fast track to get that issue solved, and don't hope that it goes away. Go out and do it. So any questions?
What is your new company doing?
So we are a CRM company for email for web and mobile companies, but we haven't announced or launched anything yet, so didn't want to go too much into the pitch. But we're firmly on the upper right quadrant around helping companies get new customers, convert trial to paid customers, something that every company will have a conversation with you about because every company cares about that.
Why did you decide to go raise when you did?
What's that?
Why did you decide to raise money when you did?